lots of sites identified to us, data points on maps, in writing. Some were ours, some came from Commissioner Cricket, some came from PPA. So what Robin did, it's called made an attribute table. She actually photo interpreted every point and then identified whether it was wetlands or uplands, whether it was linear, on a road, near a road, or not, whether it was in or adjacent to a stream or a pond. Sometimes there was a cluster of points, so she sort of tried to identify where the concentration was. We couldn't often tell if it was one place with slightly different information or multiple places, so she tried to get her arms around that. The municipality, a location name, and where she could, any other comments. She was looking, she did a great deal of research, and one of the things she told me that was interesting was some of these sites, when she went back way in time, looking at older and older maps, you could still see them. I mean, some of these are historically there, some were not. So all of that, so the work that she did, I think, was very informative to us, and they have a really good handle on the sites that were provided to us. So at the October meeting, Robin will be here, Mark Texel will be here, he'll report on where DEP is, he'll explain all that enforcement data, she'll go over her work, and we'll discuss where we go from there.
Nancy, when you say historical, are you talking about more than 10 years, or talking about 100 years, 50 years?
I think as far back as an absolute taker.
Okay.
I'm not sure. I mean, that's why I didn't want to do any of this without her in the room, because she did all the work. But, and it was, she was very engaged and interested, and so she really poked and prodded, once you, as you know, once you start.
Yes.
So it was just, she did note that.
Thank you.
Several meetings, we met with South Tom's River and their landfill. They were trying to think about getting it closed, and we're trying to walk our way through the issue of how do you close up the municipal landfill, given the data we have, rapid landfill assessment. So we met with them. It's going to take some more data before we make a decision, but we work back to the meeting. Yesterday, I spoke to Lead New Jersey Class 2016, and they are eager to delve into various issues. I spoke with the EPA staff there, and a lot of the discussion was on work and the type of things that are happening there or that are happening around the Pinelands. That's cases that have come up. They also mentioned the closure of the forest fire towers to the public because of vandalism, essentially. It's been going on for years and years, and the forest fire service basically had it. So a resource from people to go and see the magnificence of the view now they'll fence it. Another meeting we have coming up is with Burlington County. They have a effort going on to figure out what to do with the former BCC college that's next to us. As you probably are aware, they're shifting most of their classes to Mount Laurel. There's a few classes there this fall, and there may be some in spring. That's about it. The last thing I just want to mention is the ongoing work on the PDC enhancement program. We're working on the 5 ideas that the builders gave to us. We'll be getting back to that shortly. I also heard from the Farm Bureau that they're shooting for a target of September 1st to get back to us. They didn't quite make it. They're close, and I was told to say it is compatible with your draft in most aspects. So, the devil's in the detail. So and I have been in contact with the various people trying to provide information so we can make some progress on it. That's all I have.
Good morning, commissioners, members of the public. Just 2 quick items. We have a meeting scheduled for next week with the Department of Environmental Protection. Some of their forest fire service people are coming in. We believe we're going to be discussing buffers to some existing residential developments in Ocean County where the Forest Fire Service is apparently interested in doing some work that would provide the property line buffer for those developments. I'll update you on that after we have that meeting. And the only other issue that I wanted to mention is We've been working with a couple of utility companies. We have a repeat issue. Even though we have the veg management plan in place now that allows for the maintenance of the vegetation in the rights of way, and that plan is proving to be successful. The issue that we're grappling with now is upgrades to their maintenance roads. Utility companies understandably are interested in making sure that their maintenance roads provide access to these towers. And in many instances, they're running through wetlands and they're threatening endangered species issues. So we've met with both a couple of the major utility companies to discuss these issues, and we continue to resolve them on a case-by-case basis. But I just wanted to mention that that is becoming a slight issue in the firm. That's all I have.
Any questions? Commissioners, on any of the record reports? Move on. Next, we have resolutions. First resolution we have, we have three bundled together, two from Buena Vista, one from Medford. Do we have a motion on this? So moved. Second. Is there any explanation or questions?
Is there an explanation for
Is there an explanation first? Do you have any comments from the staff on this?
I don't believe so. We're happy to field any questions.
Okay.
My question, at least initially, is on the first application, changing use from residential to commercial. And there are some conditions. I'm concerned about I'm interested in the septic system that will be used. When you have a change in use, I'm wondering if there is any evaluation of the septic system required by maybe the Board of Health or the Commission. Is there any, do you know?
When a change of use is proposed like this, it's my understanding now, use those words, but I'm not an expert on the county health department regulations, but the county health department has to permit the connection of the proposed use to the septic system. They have to make a finding that it's adequate to support the proposed use.
Has the Commission evaluated the septic system in any way? Do we need to?
Under our regulations, we wouldn't do the actual, what I would refer to as the review of the septic, the technical review of the septic system. Under our rules, we make sure that it meets our standards, and we would defer to the county health department if a determination was made that the system is not adequate.
Thank you. Another question. One of the conditions, condition number 5, the proposed stormwater management facilities approved in application number 089.001, which I think it also contained outstanding violations. It has to do with stormwater management. Is there some mechanism there that makes sure that that is done at this point, or before the development or change of use takes place, or does it coincide with it?
A little background for this might be helpful for fellow commissioners. So this relates back to Buena Township has something that they refer to as the railroad tourist station in the village of Richland. Certain development was undertaken there without application to the commission. Ultimately, the township completed its application, which included a parking lot and some what I would refer to as minor structures that were developed. As a condition of that, the township was required to provide stormwater management for those improvements. That application was approved, I believe it was in April of 2015, but over a year ago. The applicant has not constructed the stormwater management basin yet, nor have they constructed some of the improvements that were proposed. When we received this application for the proposed change of use, we inquired of the applicant what the status was of the stormwater management facilities for the tourist railroad station. We were advised, and I believe it's in the report, that the township is about to file a contract. The contract includes the reconstruction of the building and return application. we thought it was important enough, since it had not occurred yet, the stormwater management facilities, to condition this approval on installation of those stormwater management facilities by the end of the year. If they're not put in by the end of the year, the development is, we would intervene in the development of the proposed 1,500 square foot commercial structure. They're both going out on the same contract, and I think one's going to get ahead of the other, but if they do, we would intervene in that matter.
Yeah, thank you, that's the answer, that's the response that I wanted to know about. Are there any other outstanding violations that need to be corrected at this point at those sites?
No, not on these sites. I think there's one other, my recollection is that there's one other park in another area of Pinelands Township where we have outstanding violations, but not on this parcel.
Thank you. Thank you very much.
Director, on that same application, there was one comment from the public who submitted a series of objections to the project, which you addressed in your answer, but there was one that I didn't see. That was the claim that this site was in a historic area and therefore the project required a cultural survey. Could you address that objection?
Certainly, Commissioner. Probably just a little background again would be helpful. When an application arrives at the Commission, we have certain regulations that trigger when a cultural resource survey may be required by the Commission. If an application comes into it and cultural resource survey could be required by the Commission, we forward it to our staff archaeologist. Our staff archaeologist reviews that application to determine whether or not there's a probability of cultural resources and makes a determination whether a survey would or would not be required. In this particular instance, our archaeologist reviewed the application and determined that since they were reconstructing a previously existing building and the area was disturbed, that a cultural resource survey would not be required. And we tried to allude to that issue in our response to public comment. It's on page 4 at the top of the page, where we indicate that we thought the application was consistent with the standards of the Pinelands Plan, including stormwater management and cultural resources. Thank you. You're welcome.
Any other comments on this resolution? We have a motion and a second. All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstentions? Very good. Moving on. This resolution we've had, it's been proposed a couple times now. Waterford Township. Do we have a motion?
So moved. Second.
I think we should get at least a little bit of explanation on this, being that it's been in front of us, not in front of us, in front of us. Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. What I'll do, I'll try to provide a broad overview, because obviously there's a long history with this. It's outlined in the resolution that was provided to the commissioners with a hope to try to at least frame the issue. I can say that this application started out several years ago with a meeting amongst Waterford Township officials and commission staff, including myself, where the township was interested in providing some parking. This is on Jackson Road in Waterford Township. For those of you that are familiar or may be familiar with Waterford Township, this is immediately across from the ATCO Raceway. As the application moved through the Commission's process, ultimately we issued a public development report recommending approval of a parking lot. The staff felt that it met all the standards of the CMP, including wetlands protection, threatened, endangered, and stormwater management. An appeal was filed by one of the neighbors that objected to having the parking lot developed adjacent to the property. That appeal was reviewed, and ultimately that appeal was denied, and the person did not have standing to request that hearing. I'll defer to legal counsel given the questions on that issue. The application then was rescheduled for the commission agenda. The applicant was in touch with us and said that they had changed the intent of the proposed parking lot. The proposed parking lot, one of the purposes was originally to provide overflow parking for a commercial use in the vicinity across the street. The township, as the application made its way through the local process, determined that the parking lot would be exclusively for municipal purposes. The applicant, in this case Waterford Township, prior to the August commission meeting, asked that we hold the application and not present it to the commission, that we amend the public development report to clarify that the proposed parking lot would be exclusively for municipal purposes and would not be used for commercial purposes. We did that, and that brings us up to today. The application is in front of the commission with that amended report, and I'll be happy to answer any questions I may have omitted.
The purpose of the appeal was simply that this person didn't want it to build near their property.
I would phrase it a little bit different, Commissioner. They were concerned with the development and its effect on their property, yes.
So it's not going to be used now for the raceway, it's going to be used for municipal purposes.
That is our understanding, and the reason I phrase it that way, Commissioner, is in either case, or Mr. Chairman, excuse me, in either case, under the commission's rules, it would be permitted. This is really a local issue of what the purpose of the parking lot is. So to try to explain that a little clearer, under the commission's rules, a proposed municipal parking lot is a permitted use in this area, regardless of the intent of that parking lot. It's up to the municipality to determine who can and can't use the parking lot. So in either instance, it would have been okay under the commission's rules.
So once we put in that development application that it's municipal use, can they change their mind once they?
Yes, would be the answer to that.
So regardless of what's in that report, they can still change their mind?
Well, I think ultimately the answer is yes. So the question that you're asking, Commissioner, is if a municipality applies to us.
Municipal parking lot, can it then change back to commercial once the report has been issued?
And I was trying to give you an example of the question that you're asking, which is a municipality applies to us to build a municipal building to provide offices for their police department. And then they determine that they're going to use that office building for their public works department. It's still an office building, and under our rules, if no additional development is proposed, we would not intervene in that situation. Did that help? And so back to the parking lot. If a municipality proposes a parking lot that will provide
Regardless of what the parking lot is used
for municipal purposes,
I got you.
and then determines that it's going to use it for a recreational park for parking, it's still a municipal parking lot.
Good.
Stacy, you should just tell me a little bit of a standing issue.
This was with as a third-party appeal request for an OAL hearing. As you know, the Administrative Procedure Act permits third-party appeals if there's a statutory right or a constitutionally protected right at a particularized property interest. In this particular case, there is no statutory right for a OAL hearing for third-party for public under the CMP. In doing the analysis of the bases that were provided, they were general, pertaining to protecting threatened endangered species, whether or not staff had reviewed the correct site, concerns generally about protection of the pinelands and trash, not issues that would have been reviewable under the Pinelands, under the CMP, nor did they raise particular issue with regard to that property that is unique to the property, which is what the standing is for small.
And was it the staff that made that determination that the standing was not adequate?
Yes, and that determination was made through and obviously reviewed with and approved by council. AG's office.
AG's. Thank you.
Any other questions on this resolution?
There was some talk in some of the documents about cell tower, no cell tower. And that was, where is that in?
The commission does have an application before it now for a cell tower. It's a public, what we refer to as a public development application, which will ultimately arrive before the commission on one of its monthly meetings. But we are processing that application currently.
On the same parcel?
On the same parcel, yes.
Any other questions or comments? All right, all in favor of this resolution?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstained? Next, we have a resolution for approval of a waiver of strict compliance. Do we have a motion? So moved. Second. Do you need any explanation on this one? Any questions or comments?
Just, in reviewing this, thinking about it, there were two, I guess, one or two adjoining properties that were concerned about the water exceeding the Pinelands standards. I think it's 2 parts per million nitrogen level coming into their property and affecting their wells. As I'm thinking about this, perhaps if the well was located in a different spot on that property, coming off in that direction, it wouldn't be more than 22 parts per million. It might even be less. So it really depends on where that well is located, and that's not really the jurisdiction of the commission. I don't think that's, again, the Board of Health, County Board of Health.
The issue you're raising, Commissioner, I believe we addressed. Yes, the answer to your question. So the proposed septic system, based on the County Board of Health regulation, has to be located a minimum distance from any existing potable water well, which is the case in this situation. So the answer is, you summarized it, I believe, accurately.
And again, I think the commission is concerned about, it doesn't matter which way the water is flowing, we're looking for 2 parts per million. Whether it's going into the wetlands, whether it's going into a residential property, whether it's going into an upland, we're still looking, when it comes off the property, 2 parts per million.
Not to get too technical of an answer, but the reason this person is applying for a waiver of strict compliance is that they cannot meet our 2 parts per million standard. So in this instance, they're required to use an alternate design wastewater system that will treat wastewater to a certain parts per million. Because based on our dilution model, they're not at least 1 acre, we don't believe they're going to meet the 2 parts per million standards. And that's why they wind up in the waiver application. I just wanted to note that the state's drinking water quality standard is 10 parts per million nitrogen. So again, that's a regulation administered by others.
Thank you.
Sir.
Any other questions or comments on the waiver? Hearing none, all in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Abstained? Moving on. Next, we have public comment on agenda items and public development, or pending public development applications. See a lot of new faces out there today. This is just items that are in the packet regarding applications that are going to be coming in front of us in the future, or anything that's on the agenda. There'll be a general public comment period towards the end of the meeting. So I do ask to keep the comments to around 3 minutes. If you have something that's longer, please present it in writing or send it to us. So, Terry, I see you jumping around back there.
Teresa Levin, Pinelands Preservation Alliance. One of the applications for public comment is by the Borough of South Thames River. Is Block 19, Block 1, the facility that they're now using? So in other words, they've gone ahead and they're using it and now they're getting approval for it? Do I have the right lot and block?
Would you like me to respond to that, Mr. Chairman? To our knowledge, the use has not been established. The question of the block and lot, I'm not sure of, Terry. We'll have to look into
All
that.
right, so I guess I was assuming that this was the new facility that I've been visiting to go to the land use board meeting, for the ordinance that is pending, and I guess I'll have to get back up the second time to talk about that. But if it is that site, and I think that the daycare center or that building was there long before the Pinelands, but I guess I'm asking about the stormwater. As I was standing there in the parking lot with the rain coming down, watching the site, do they have to meet the new stormwater requirements? I guess I didn't see a basin on site, but I did see what I thought was a basin at first, but then the police were parking on it. So if it was a rock indentured area, and then I didn't understand why the police were parking on it, and maybe it was just lower than the parking lot and it's an expanded parking lot. So my question is just about stormwater and stormwater quality on the site now that they've changed the use.
Thank you. Any other commenters for pending development applications or agenda items? Seeing none, we'll close that portion of public comment. Next, we have presentation.
Update on permanent land protection. We have given each of you a beautiful new map, which you're free to take with you. There's a large version out in the lobby right now, and hopefully later today or Monday we'll post the new map on the website so that everyone can access it and zoom in on it, look at particular areas if they want to. Opening slide here, this is a photo taken at one of the properties preserved through the Pinelands Conservation Fund in the last year. This was a 400-some acre property in Tabernacle and Southampton Townships known as the Bear Swamp Headwaters. So, this one gives you a little summary of the acres that were preserved in the Pinelands area through programs that the Commission either administers, contributes funding to, or is otherwise involved with. There's a photo there. That again is another one of the Pinelands Conservation Fund projects. This one in Ocean County that was preserved in the last year. So the first line there, Pinelands Conservation Fund, in the last year, 472 acres are now deed restricted and protected. So that was 3 different projects, 2 in Ocean County, and then the Bear Swamp Headwaters project I mentioned. The PDC program in the last year, an additional 267 acres were preserved through the severance of PDCs. And I should mention that in your packets for this month's meeting, you will receive a copy of the PDC Bank's annual report as well. So there's more detail in there about the acres that was preserved and the activity in the PDC program this year. So those are the 2 big totals this year. We did give you some little information on other programs, the Limited Practical Use Acquisition Program, 1.5 acres preserved this year. That's actually, I think, more property. These are very, very small properties that we're talking about in most cases. Most of them in the forest area, most of them, quarter acre maybe. So we do continue to process some of those. DEP actually does the acquisition of those properties, and they are continuing to process and offer to purchase the properties that the Commission deems eligible and sends up to them under that program. The next 2, density transfer and clustering, these reflect acres that were protected as a result of development applications in the Pinelands area that utilize these programs. Density transfer operates within the forest and rural mountain areas when somebody wants to build on a lot that otherwise isn't big enough. Rules allow for them to purchase and deed restrict non-contiguous acreage, usually in the same zone. So the program hasn't been particularly active in recent years. It was established back in 1992, and we've had a flurry of activity in the early years and don't see too many applications these days that use this program. Clustering, this is a result of the amendments that were adopted in 2009 by the Commission to require cluster development, again, in the forest and rural development areas. We have a number of active projects and applications, but few that have proceeded to get their final approvals and file the deed restrictions for the required open space. So here we have another 16 acres being preserved. We skip to the last one on the list there. It's just sort of a catch-all there. We have density, dilution, threatened and endangered species. Again, these come about through our review of specific development applications where sometimes additional land is needed and be restricted to meet CMP requirements. And then I'll go back to the GSP exit 44, that's the Garden State Parkway exit 44 public development approval that the commission issued a couple of years ago. As a result of the improvements to that interchange, the commission and Atlantic County agreed that the county would preserve some land in and around that area. They're required to preserve 356 acres total, I believe. They're up to about 190 right now. So this past year, they did an additional 48 acres. It's all in Galloway Township. It's in the rural development area. I'll show you on the map when we get to it. So the county is continuing to proceed with its obligations. They're actually doing a pretty good job, pretty consistent job each year, tying up some more property and filing the deed restrictions. And I believe they now have until July of 2018 to finish. So they're doing a good job at reporting regularly on their efforts. So total there for the year, the last year, 835 acres, and those are programs that the commission itself funded or was involved with. Not as high total as in some years, but still significant. And a couple charts just to give you an idea where the lands are located. This is the Pinelands Conservation Fund pie chart to show you that, again, still the majority of land that's preserved through the PCF acquisition program is in the forest area. Rural development area is second. We're up to 8,200 acres. This is an interesting one, I think. Average price per acre of lands that were preserved through the Pinelands Conservation Fund. Broken that down by management area. There's quite a difference, as you would expect. I assume land in the preservation area district, price per acre is pretty low. And then as you get up into, say, the rural development area, the prices are significantly higher. Average price per acre for the entire 8,200 acres is about $4,800 per acre. And the PDC program, this again is in the PDC bank report as well. But you can see our total is now up over 52,000 acres preserved through the PDC program. Most of that's in the preservation area district. The lands that were preserved in the past year through the PDC program, I believe were all, maybe one was in the agricultural production area, but the majority is in the preservation area district. Here's our bar chart that shows you how the acreage in the Pinelands that's protected has been increasing over time. Because we round these numbers and try to present them in increments of 10,000 acres, you'll see that last year and this year we're showing 460,000 acres preserved. There actually has been an increase, but it's not big enough to bump up the chart. But you know, it's still a significant total. And here again, 460,000 acres preserved. The Pinelands Commission's piece of this puzzle, 89,000 acres, or 19% of the total, has come about through the commission's programs, which is significant if you consider that we've never had a whole lot of money for acquisition and the ability to really can't purchase land ourselves. We have to rely on others and other agencies to help us with that. And then protected lands by management area. I think this is always an important one to look at. Of that 460,000 acres that are preserved, where are they focused and how are we doing in terms of preserving the land in the conservation-oriented areas? So you can see in the preservation area district right now, it's about 81% permanently protected through various programs. That's the highest percentage. Forest area, we're up over 56% now. Special ag area, almost 60% preserved, and then as you drop down into the more development-oriented areas, as you would expect, the percentage that's preserved also decreases. And just to summarize, 460,000 acres, that's just about half of the Pinelands area that's under some kind of deed restriction or permanent protection right now. The vast majority of that, 94%, is located in the preservation area district, one of the agricultural areas, and the forest area. And one last picture, that's another one of the projects in Ocean County preserved through the Pinelands Conservation Fund in the last year. And Paul, if you want to bring up the map, it'll be difficult on the screen a little bit, but we can zoom in and couple things to note. Oh yeah, that's good, thank you. So this is the gray area on the map there. That's Stockton University. And so this is the area that, these areas here were preserved as part of the Stockton University Master Plan a couple of years ago. And up here is where Atlantic County has been purchasing property in and around the Parkway interchange, 44. And the 40-some acres that they preserved in the last year, nearly 50, were right in here. All these little tiny lots they acquired from Galloway Township and have deed restricted them. So that really filled in a gap there in that area. And then two other things I wanted to note real quickly, just to give you an idea that obviously the Commission's not the only one preserving land in the Pinelands. Two notable additions this year by DEP to Belle Plaine State Forest. We don't often see additions of this size, but two this year, one in Dennis Township, walking through a little further south, sort of right where it says 610, unfortunately, the road. But this green area here, this was a new addition to Belle Plaine this year, a couple hundred acres that the state acquired in the forest area. And then Paul can scroll back across to Morris River. Right. And then again, in here, in Morris River Township, this is actually a rural development area. The state acquired a couple hundred acres there, right on Route 347. So interestingly, some of you may remember back far enough that this was a commercial zone. The Commission worked with Morris River Township to establish along Route 347 in hopes of attracting some new commercial development to the township on what was becoming a well-traveled road. It was for short traffic purposes. We spent a lot of time working with the town, coming up with design standards and redesignating an area from forest area to rural development areas to make this work. And DP has now acquired all of that commercial zone there on both sides of the intersection. It's a great addition to Belle Plaine. So, and the owner actually never did file a development application with the Commission for any kind of commercial development. So it's just one of those efforts that was well-intentioned but never did pan out. So some significant additions to Belle Plaine this year. It's not something we see all that often. So the state is still hard at work, which is good news. I think that's it. Anyone has any questions?
Susan, for PDC accounting purposes, if the farm is under the farmland preservation, is the rights considered extinguished or decided?
Extinguished.
So there is a difference.
Right. So if a property, a farm, as you say, for example, if there were a couple in Burlington County this year that are in the agricultural production area, they receive an allocation of PDCs from the Commission. And when they enter into the farmland preservation program, those rights are extinguished. They are no longer available. They can't be severed and sold or used. They're gone at that point. And we account for that in our totals when we estimate supply. We subtract those from our supply numbers.
Any other questions, comments? Great work.
Susan, how much money do we have budgeted for this land preservation in this year?
Oh, in the PCF budget?
Yeah.
There's whatever was left because there were two projects that although we allocated funding to, it's pretty clear they weren't proceeding, so their allocations expired. So I think there's $500,000, $500,000 or so. Yeah, we haven't quite decided what to do in terms of, do we launch a new round? Do we wait for more funding to become available? We're not quite sure what we're going to do yet, but there's still some money, but not a whole lot left in the acquisition fund because we keep spending it.
Thank you again. All right, now we move on to general public comment.
Chairman,
Yes.
I would like to recuse myself from the dais. I wish to make a public comment. Check this out with Stacy. And I'm going to be speaking on PDCs, but I'll be in the public comment. And we already checked this out with the Ethics Commission, and I guess Stacy can embellish if you wish. Okay. At the end.
The only point of this is, as you know, Commissioner Nicoletta has to recuse himself from PDC events, which is why he is stepping on the dais. He is permitted to speak on his own behalf with regard to those points.
mentioned before, just general public comment. If you do have anything in length or presentation, please submit that in writing. We'll make sure that it does get to all the commissioners. Try to keep your comments to 3 minutes. We do have a list. I'll go down it, and at the end, anybody who didn't sign up for the list, feel free to comment as well. First, I'm going to butcher this. I apologize. Paula Ledwitz.
Perfect.
You put there and identify yourself, where you're from. Have at it.
My name is Paula Edwards. I'm from Oakland, New Jersey. I was this weekend, Jason Hill from PPA organized a group of us to go to spots in the Pinelands, habitually, dirt bikers, jeeps, etc., to sit there, see if there were any incidents, call them into DEP. I sat in one area with another gentleman who videoed it all. We sat there for 3 hours. During the 3 hours, we called in 3 extremely egregious incidents of destruction. And when they were going up to the hill that they were destructing, there was a big sign that said, "No motor vehicles." I mean, there wasn't an area where there could be any ambiguity. I called into the DEP hotline 3 times. No park police ever came. On the first phone call was a young lady who understood. I gave her the GPS coordinates. The second 2 phone calls that I made, they didn't want to take the GPS coordinates. What are we supposed to do with that? We don't use it. I said, how are you going to find us without it? Clearly they were not prepared and not aware of what they were supposed to be doing. But they were 3 very egregious incidents right under a big sign that said, "No motor vehicles." We called it in 3 times, and we waited 3 hours, and no police ever came. During the day, other people will speak 12 in 3 hours. There were only a few of us out there, and we called in 12 incidents, and not 1 incident was responded to by the park police, not 1. And just on an outside thing, when I got home that day, I got a phone call from a friend's son who had taken his fiancée up to Apple Pie Hill because he wanted to show his fiancée where his parents had taken him hiking and where him and his parents had climbed the tower and seen the Pine Barrens and et cetera, et cetera. And he called me and he said, "And now I'm never going to be able to take my children." This is something my grandfather was there, my parents were there, I were there. And now because I've done nothing wrong, I am going to be punished. I am penalized now, and it's blocked off to me and my children. On that subject, a couple months ago, Jason also got together a bunch of us. We've been going out there every month, and we've been painting over the graffiti. We've been picking up every piece of trash in the parking areas everywhere. We've been really trying and to close this down to families. I mean, this is a family thing. This is the people who want the Pine Barrens. So to close it down to them, because they've done nothing wrong, is, I think, horrible. And also, I would like to say the DEP clearly, after our day in the woods, is not serious about this enforcement, responded to not 1. We were clear, and we picked very egregious places. We picked places where they could easily get to with cars, and not 1 person ever responded.
Thank you.
Randy DePasquale.
Good morning. My name is Randy DePasquale. Sorry, from Marlton. I'm a hiker, kayaker, somebody who generally likes to spend their free time in the Pine Barrens. I wanted to come and talk to you today basically about the same things Paul was mentioning about the off-road vehicle situation in Martin State Forest. How we desperately need a more controlled system out there. specifically a map, which I know has become a controversial word out there. I think it's promising to hear that the commission is working on their own, their own set of areas that are prohibited and permitted. And we really need that. We need that to be created and implemented, because I believe a lot of the off-road community, when they say they're not out to damage things, some are, but many aren't. They just want to have a good time. However, when you don't know that you shouldn't be in a certain area, you may still be creating damage. So a map is good for educating the general public where you should be, where you shouldn't be, where you can have fun, and still not ruin the landscape that you're trying to enjoy. And also, if the enforcement situation is as bad as it seems to have been in this recent volunteer effort, you need a clear map, a clear designation of where people can and can't be, so that if they get a ticket, a warning, whatever it is, and that goes to court, it holds up. You need to be able to back that up, because otherwise, what's the point of ever getting out there? You're just burning gas and wasting people's time at that point. I also think the practice of issuing permits for off-road vehicles out in Wharton State Forest is a bit ridiculous. I think that's something that needs to stop. To me, it seems equivalent to saying there's a speed limit of 25 miles an hour in a school zone, but people want to have a drag race there, so on occasion we'll issue a permit. The two areas, the area and the landscape, or rather the activity, they're not compatible. They're just not inherently. So basically, I urge the commission to continue their work to create this map, and it's very encouraging to hear that you are taking action, because you are the commission that exists to protect the Pinelands. So, thank you.
Thank you. Carolyn?
I think the gentleman after me wants to speak on that same issue. I want to talk about PDCs. Come back to me.
Dan Baylor?
Greetings, Dan Bailiff. I live in Haddon Heights, New Jersey, and I'm here to speak on the liberty and justice for all idea that was opening this meeting. I don't see any off-road vehicles on the walls here depicted as part of the things that people really cherish in the Pinelands. There's many other ways for these off-road vehicles to be used. There has to be more of a concerted effort on the part of the commission to uphold what it is you've been here to do, which is protect these pinelands. Similarly, the pipelines that are proposed, these massive infrastructure projects, which are unneeded and a blatant abuse of power on the part of big oil and corporate interests to take from us a precious, scientifically significant resource. The irony is that these off-road vehicles are the things that are being powered by this circle of violence against nature here in the Pinelands. It has to be something that the commission is responsible for and not a political football. This is protection. I feel really, really strongly about these lands, and the preservation of them is much more important than allowing destructive behavior. I mean, 12 incidences in 3 hours with no enforcement. Please do your jobs.
Conservation Foundation, and I just wanted to briefly say along these same lines that the situation is with off-road vehicles is worsening significantly across the entire Pine Barrens in terms of destruction of forest and wetlands. And strong action does really need to be taken with enforcement and education, which was also brought up before, what can be done and what can't be done and where. Thank you.
Thank you. Jason Howell?
Hi everyone, Jason Howell, Pinelands Preservation Alliance. Our stakeout on Monday, I was honestly quite surprised at the lack of response that we got from DEP. And for that, I don't blame the park police. They're doing what they can. I know many of them, they're very good people. They want to do this, they want to stop this, but they're unable to because the DEP has refused to provide the tools that they need to succeed. Mainly a map, a substantial motorized access plan that would allow them to effectively patrol the forest roads. Now with the spaghetti network in Morton State Forest, there is no way that they can cover that territory and protect these sensitive areas. Not to mention that in many of these areas, their vehicles simply do not go. Now I evaluated the police data from mid-July to mid-August. We were able to get that through an OPA request. They made 9 summonses, or they made summonses for 9 different incidents. That's over a 1-month period. In 3 hours, 10 volunteers identified 12 different illegal off-road vehicle drivers. So you can see the discrepancy of what the park police can do and what a well-meaning, knowledgeable set of volunteers can do in that same time period. Because we weren't restricted from patrolling certain areas that the park police simply, they don't have time to get to on a day-to-day basis. So we need this motorized access plan to have any chance of stopping the off-road vehicle issue. And the time is now. This damage is long-lasting. And we just can't let this go any longer. This is it right now. Thank you.
Emily Smith?
Hi, my name is Emily Smith. I live in Upper Township, New Jersey. This past Labor Day, I helped out with Jason Howell and for the illegal off-road vehicle watch in Morton State Forest. We spent time looking at several ponds during that time, but had been impacted by off-road vehicles, and one that had been spared. The first pond was in pristine condition. There were native species of grass growing plentifully, an abundance of ferns, and some type of moss which carpeted the soft spongy ground on which we carefully stepped. One could also make out a path made by people walking onto the wetland. Apparently, field scientists were conducting a study of the area and thus compacted the ground with their footsteps. As we looked at the peaceful scenery, we were informed of several types of plants growing natively to this area, which included highbush blueberry, Atlantic white cedar, and leatherbush. The next wetland area we traveled to also looked fairly healthy, despite an obvious muddy track which scarred the open area adjacent to the forest on our right. Apparently, trucks or other large vehicles had already gotten to this place and were beginning to tear the land. The sensitive ecological makeup of these wetland areas do not rebound so quickly when pressure is applied to the moist, pliable ground on which the plethora of native species take root to grow. But despite the few muddy tracks most of the area looked to be in okay condition. The last and final wetland area we went to was not really a wetland at all. There was water, but it was contained in a black and barren pond, which upon closer inspection had an oily surface residue which contaminated the top layer. There were no ferns, grasses, wildflowers, any plants whatsoever growing on this dead body of water. There was, however, one forlorn sandpiper spotted near the far side of the area, hopefully poking around for some grubs, possibly. Hopefully, it as well did not get contaminated with what I assumed was gasoline or motor oil. It was shocking to note that this seemingly poisoned cesspool had once been habitat for different types of plants and animal species native to the Pine Barrens. As you were driving around on the forest roads, which by the way were comprised of very soft sugar sand and so degraded that one had to have a 4-wheel drive in order to get around and not get stuck. We spotted several signs warning of illegal trespassing of natural areas and fines attributed to that offense. However, The couple of quads and motorists driving untagged dirt bikes on the road did not seem to make note or care about the unlawfulness of their activities. Furthermore, when we made calls to the DEP and waited for park police to arrive, no personnel made the effort to even show up. We have these lands in place to provide sanctuary for the threatened plant and animal species, which are essential oases tucked into the surrounding developed area in one of the most densely populated states in the country. And we also protect these areas so the people of New Jersey and outside visitors can enjoy recreational activities such as hiking, fishing, camping, and responsible dirt biking. However, these lands are being decimated by a minority of off-road vehicle users who cause great disturbance with their erosion of the land, impaired drinking, and littering of the forest interior. If we want this destruction to end, park police need to give out tickets so these individuals pay for their actions. Signs designated protected areas are not enough to stop them. They can access all parts of the forest at will, whenever, with their high-tech vehicles and their avid defiance of the state park rules. If they don't pay, the forest will continue to suffer at the loss of both indigenous pineland species and the recreational users who cherish these natural areas. Thank you.
Terry?
Teresa Levin, Pinelands Preservation Alliance. I want to talk about PDCs. I know that you are working on PDC revisions, but I want to support Jay's comments at the P&I meeting when he said that the farmers were waiting. In South Toms River Borough, there's an ordinance pending. I'm opposed to the change for reasons that don't involve the CMP, but in reading the ordinance, and they've put this ordinance forward several times, and they just haven't had a public hearing on it, and the council finally approved it, but it's supposed to happen on Monday night. And so, reading the ordinance, they're changing the municipal lands. It's a municipal landfill. They're changing it, and they're changing it for 314 apartments, but there's no PDCs associated with it. And South Toms River Borough conformed very late in the process. They didn't do it till 2003. Because of that, the only other piece of land in South Toms River Borough that could be developed, the application went forward before that conformance happened. Because of that, the CMP says if they're not in conformance, they don't have to apply PDCs. So if PDCs are not applied to the landfill, if they don't have to be applied in this case because they're changing it from municipal land to residential land for these apartments with this redevelopment overlay area that they're doing, when there would be no opportunities for any PDCs in South Toms River Borough. And I don't understand. I think that the same thing happened over the years in Stafford Township. Every time I saw a change, there weren't PDCs assigned. So not only do you need to change the plan on this side, but something has to be done, because if now all these changes are occurring and it's not a requirement for PDCs, you're not even having them used here, and because you're sitting around and you're still talking about it and you're making a requirement for all of them, but you can make the requirement, but unless the land also has to, you know, all regional growth areas have the requirement for PDCs, then it doesn't do any good to change it that you have to use PDCs if you're going to develop the houses. These changes in the land, I guess, is what I'm speaking to, not just the fact that, that whether it be residential, whether it be commercial. Here's the other one, the last one is South Toms River Borough. It was zoned for housing and it went to commercial. And so I just think that the comments that Jay made were right on target. The farmers are waiting. They've been impacted over and over and over again. And in the 26 years that I've watched this process, it seems like every time the PDCs go to the wayside. And so I think you need to move faster.
Sean, would you mind if I ask Terry a question or just mention something to her? Terry, we haven't seen the ordinance that you're talking about, so But I can tell you that in all of our meetings with South Tom's River and all the emails back and forth, we have consistently told them there will need to be a requirement for PDCs built into this new zoning or redevelopment plan that you're talking about. So if they adopt it and send it to us without a PDC component, it will be telling them they need to revise it.
Yes, it is interesting that in the report and in the plan, they say, here's the process. You know, you have to go to the land use board, you have to do this. Never, there is not even one word or mention of the Pinelands Commission in the report.
Right, and we have asked them on prior occasions with prior redevelopment plans to make sure they send them to us in advance so we can make sure all the correct language is in there. We just haven't seen this one.
Mr. Chairman, yes, sir. As the director here, what's the average net density assigned to South Tom's River Regional Growth?
I believe that the CMP specifies 3.5 units per acre as the base density in South Tom's River Regional Growth Area. I have to, not looking at the rules, but it's one of the higher numbers.
And the acres associated with this change are?
I couldn't tell you because we haven't seen
40.
the plan to know
And the acres associated with
exactly.
the Pinelands is 40, 45, something like that.
That may be the entire landfill and surrounding acreage. I don't know how much of it in the redevelopment plan that Terry's talking about would actually be used for residential. The number of units seems consistent with what they've told us in the past that they're going to propose.
Yeah, I've been concerned about the number of units on this parcel as well, but I'll wait till I see the ordinance.
Last one signed up here for public comment is Paul Lynn.
Is there anybody else?
Everybody else on the list, I've gone through, but if there's anybody else? Yes, sir.
My name is Alan Crawford. I'm from Mount Holly, New Jersey. I'll just keep this really short since everybody else up here has been speaking about the ATV situation. So I'll just say this. I think when we talk about, when we describe this as vandalism, I think we're kind of making light of the situation. It seems that vandalism is not strong enough word for what's going on out there. I think what's going on out there is actually theft. It's theft from the things that live in these vulnerable places. I think it's theft from the law-abiding public. And I also especially think that it's theft from future generations of New Jerseyans. And I ask the commission to help us stop this criminal activity and uphold the law. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Hi, excuse me, Albert Horner from Medford Lakes. Thanks for the opportunity to talk. One of the issues I'd like to talk about is we've developed a culture of individuals who believe that the Pine Barrens and the Pinelands are only good for motorsports activities. And the reason that culture has been developed is because we issue permits for off-road vehicle events to be held in the Pinelands. That in itself sounds pretty easy, generic thing, but what happens is if you have a couple of hundred people at an event, the following week and the months and years afterwards, they continue to come back to the Pinelands, and they do the same run that they had done during the event, and they bring friends. And these events are not held in other states on public lands, but in New Jersey they are, and people from Pennsylvania and New York, Delaware, all over the Delaware Valley come to ride through the Pinelands. I was part of the watch situation that Jason Howe did on Labor Day, and I saw people from Pennsylvania and from Maryland all coming to ride through our Pine Barrens in Jeeps and off-road vehicles. What's happened is we've developed a user class that has become an abuser class, and it is so widespread that innocent people drive over areas that appear to be quite legitimately available to drive over. but they're actually wetlands and paleo dunes, and it's been so destroyed by off-road vehicles, and it's not marked, and they just go ahead and do it, and they see nothing wrong with it at all. The off-road events contribute absolutely nothing to the ecology of the Pinelands. They do nothing but destroy the Pinelands. We have to halt issuing permits for off-road vehicle events. I was part, as I said earlier, I was part of the watch group on Labor Day, and I watched 3 really young teenage kids that had very expensive bikes, dirt bikes, and equipment that in the end was probably worth thousands of dollars. And they were riding in an area that was clearly marked with a no motor vehicle sign. And they had no qualms about doing that. They were completely innocent. They absolutely felt that they belonged there. They were not licensed. None of their dirt bikes were licensed. And they apparently came from a neighborhood close by and obviously do it quite regularly. So my appeal here is to really look at this issue of issuing permits for off-road vehicle events, to change the culture out there. Thank you.
Is there anyone else on the list? All right, Mr. Levitt.
Good morning, my name is Paul Valletta, and I reside in Hamilton, New Jersey. Terry, thank you for the comments supporting the farmers. I appreciate that. For those who don't know me, I'm a second-generation blueberry farmer. I was born, raised, lived my whole life in a community of the Pinelands. I also started a family and raised them in the Pinelands. I worked my whole life in a recognized industry in and of the Pinelands. I was brought up working on a large blueberry farm started by my father and uncle. The Pinelands is the birthplace of the modern blueberry cultivation. This industry is supposed to be protected, preserved, and enhanced by the Pinelands Act. At a long point in time, my family had the largest blueberry farm in the world. We grew and harvested on 1,200 acres. As of recently, we are in the top 5 in the world, with many large corporations in Western United States and South America growing exponentially. We have experienced many hard economic times recently with increased costs and a growing supply of blueberries around the globe. Never before was the value and marketability of PDCs so important to our South Jersey blueberry farms. I love the Pinelands and would not prefer any other region to call my home. But in 1979, the farming community in the Pinelands was very anxious and worried of new laws devaluating our farm through regional zonings changes brought on by the Pinelands Act. The plan was sound by preserving the most sensitive areas of forest and wetlands and redirecting growth to appropriate townships and towns. But the farms were supposed to be reimbursed by the PDC program. The farms of the Pinelands are of the most importance to the integrity of this region by way of economic, open space, history, culture, and pride. While many farms and families have never received their fair compensation since 1980, and are afraid they never will. The most prosperous building spikes of our region have passed with Atlantic, Cumberland, and Cape May County severely affected by the downturn of Atlantic City economics. The PDC proposal enhancement that is now being circulated by staff is not perfect and will not be the savior to the farming community. However, it is certainly a step in the right direction. The staff has invested a lot of time and money trying to balance the push-pull of the builders, towns, commercial owners, farmers, and private citizens. We, the farming community, have waited a long time for improving the PDC program, and we're always met with a lot of opposition. I realize that this region needs a balance of residential, commercial, open space, and recreation. But without the component of PDCs to protect farmlands, you take out an entity responsible and essential for that smart growth. I have to say that farmlands in the Pinelands are most critical. I know that Atlantic County and parts of Cape is an economic turmoil caused by the AC casino collapse. I also know that housing is tanking in these regions and have many concerns about this PDC proposal. But what I like to say is the first step to righting the balance of this region, economic and ecological problems, is to preserve the farmland first. Not by zoning changes that are not permanent, but by deed restriction programs like PDC and state and county farmland preservation. My wish is that this PDC proposal passes along with a new regional TDR program that would expand the PDCs to a statewide receiving district where appropriate, and it would be enacted. Along with voter referendum for a tax or funding mechanism for open space and farmland preservation, it would be a three-pronged approach to solving the problem of preservation. PDCs, state TDRs, and state farmland preservation programs would work in unison and get the deed restrict value more appealing to the growers. I have to just leave finishing with this thought. Some may say that the Pineland farms are not that ecologically sound compared to pristine preservation wetlands and forests. But I have witnessed many different wildlife on my farms, from bald eagles, beavers, foxes, pine snakes, and indigenous reptiles, just to name a few, along with the floral and the surrounding fringe forest, and with a state preserved fruit, coupled with the open space, cultural, and economic benefits to the community. It is a jewel that the Pineland should not live without. Thank you.
Are there any other for public comment? Seeing none, we'll close the portion of public comment. Do we have anything for closed session? All right. That being the case, before we motion to adjourn, do we have any comments from the commission?
Yes, just to thank the staff for their ongoing work on this issue and working for us. And also to thank those volunteers who got up and spoke during the public portion, who are doing what they can to lend support to these efforts to enforce and show how the public can make a meaningful arm in that effort. Hopefully we're coming closer to a good answer to that problem. Thank you.
I would just like to ask Nancy and the other staff, do you have any response to anything that was said about the lack of enforcement? Is there anything that we can do as a commission, as individual commissioners? Is the lack of money? The lack of money? Why are they not interested?
I don't know that they're not interested. I can't speak for the department, and that's why I want Mark Texel to come to the October meeting so he can speak for the department and the enforcement efforts. I know staff has told me that when they're out in the field, they see more parklands. Maybe they're not in the right places, maybe it was a bad weekend. I can't speak for them, so I think it's best to have them come and talk about what they're doing and how successful they are.
And he'll be here in October.
To that point, can you give him a summary of what we heard today so that they've got that when they come in?
I will absolutely.
Thank you.
I too would like to thank the public, those of you that go out and observe activities in Wharton State and in the Pinelands. I think it's really important for the commission to hear what you see, hear about what you see and how you interact with those people that are enjoying the Pinelands, as well as the people that are enjoying the Pinelands and also damaging it at the same time. I think it's a huge problem to go off a role and play, and we just have to continue to try to make a difference here. So again, I'd like to thank the public.
All right. We have a motion to adjourn. Second. All in favor? Aye.